Hey everybody, and welcome back to Tell Me More Stories Told as Podcast.
Glad to be here.
Today we're diving deep into a story.
Oh, yeah.
A story that shook a nation to its core.
Uh-huh.
The Boston Marathon bombing.
Yeah.
Picture this. It's Patriots Day 2013.
Okay.
Beautiful spring day. Boston is buzzing with excitement.
I can imagine it.
Marathons in full swing.
Right?
Runners pushing themselves to the limit.
Yeah.
Crowds cheering them on.
Amazing.
Incredible energy in the air.
Uh-huh.
You know what's so powerful about this story?
What's that?
It all unfolded against this backdrop of pure joy,
Right.
celebration,
Yeah.
people coming together to see,
Uh-huh.
human resilience,
Right.
achievement.
Yeah.
And then in a flash, everything changes.
Just like that.
At 2:49 p.m.,
Okay.
2 bombs explode near the finish line
Wow.
on Boylston Street,
I see.
14 seconds apart.
14 seconds.
Can you imagine those 14 seconds?
It's hard to even fathom.
1 minute you have cheers,
Uh-huh.
laughter, the sense of accomplishment.
Uh-huh.
The next, you're plunged into this world of chaos, smoke, and screams.
It's terrifying.
It's almost impossible to comprehend
I don't know.
the sheer terror and confusion of that moment.
Yeah.
Witnesses described it
How so?
like a scene from a war movie.
Wow.
The ground shook,
Oh, gosh.
debris flying everywhere,
Goodness.
people running for their lives,
Right.
trying to find their loved ones.
Yeah.
In the midst of all that,
Uh-huh.
the human cost of this tragedy
Yeah.
starts to become clear.
Right.
3 people were killed almost instantly.
Oh, gosh.
Crystal Campbell, a young restaurant manager,
Mm-hmm.
just full of life.
Yeah.
Lou Lingzi, a grad student from China,
Okay.
chasing her dreams.
Yeah.
And 8-year-old Martin Richard,
Oh, no.
there with his family
Uh-huh.
to cheer on the runners.
Oh, awful.
Martin Richard's story is just heartbreaking.
Yeah.
He was standing near the finish line with his family,
Right.
holding a homemade sign
Oh, wow.
that said, "No more hurting people."
Oh, my goodness.
His younger sister, Jane, lost a leg in the blast,
Oh.
and his mother suffered severe injuries.
That's just devastating.
It's a reminder
Of what?
of the indiscriminate nature of this attack.
Uh-huh.
It tore apart innocent lives in an instant.
Yes, it did.
And we can't forget about the hundreds who were injured.
Right.
Many suffered life-altering injuries,
Yeah.
lost limbs,
Uh-huh.
dealing with shrapnel wounds,
Oh,
facing a long and arduous road to recovery.
right.
The physical and emotional scars
Yeah.
run deep,
Uh-huh.
even years later.
I can only imagine.
It's important to remember,
Yes.
this attack wasn't just about the casualties.
Okay.
It was an assault on a city's spirit,
Yeah.
on the very idea of a
the...
free and open society
I see.
where people can come together
Yeah.
and celebrate.
Right.
But in the face of such tragedy,
Uh-huh.
the people of Boston
Yeah.
showed incredible resilience.
That's right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That Boston Strong slogan
Right.
became a rallying cry,
I remember that.
a symbol of the city's refusal to be broken by fear.
Yeah.
While the city was reeling,
Right.
investigators were already on the scene, piecing together
Yeah.
the fragments of a shattered day,
It must have been difficult.
determined to find those responsible.
Uh-huh.
It was a monumental undertaking.
Yeah.
No one claiming responsibility.
Right.
Investigators starting from scratch,
Great.
trying to make sense of the chaos.
Yeah.
They meticulously comb through debris,
Right.
analyze every scrap of evidence,
Wow.
followed every lead,
Uh-huh.
no matter how small.
I see.
Think about it.
Okay.
Sifting through mountains of debris,
Yeah.
looking for anything
Right.
that could help them understand
Mm-hmm.
what happened,
Yeah.
who was behind it.
Right.
And if there was more to come,
Oh, gosh.
they found bits of metal,
Uh-huh.
nails, ball bearings, even pieces of pressure cooker lids
Pressure cooker lids.
scattered amidst the wreckage.
Wow.
Those seemingly insignificant fragments
Yeah.
were like pieces of a puzzle.
Uh-huh.
And as they started fitting those pieces together,
Right.
they realized
Yeah.
they were dealing with pressure cooker bombs.
Pressure cooker bomb.
Homemade devices
Gosh.
designed to inflict maximum damage
I see.
with shrapnel.
Oh, wow.
3 days after the bombing,
Okay.
under immense pressure
Yeah.
to find those responsible,
Right.
the FBI released photos of 2 suspects
Uh-huh.
captured on surveillance footage,
Okay.
the Tsarnaev brothers.
Tsarnaev brothers.
And that's when the story takes a dramatic turn.
Ow.
Releasing those photos was a gamble.
Yeah.
It put the faces of the suspects out there for the world to see,
Right.
hoping it would lead to a break in the case.
Yeah.
And it did.
It did.
But it also triggered a chain of events
Oh, gosh.
that would escalate the situation from a manhunt to a full-blown crisis.
Oh.
If you're enjoying this deep dive
Yeah.
into the Boston Marathon bombing,
Yeah.
hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next part
I will.
of the story.
Okay.
We'll be back soon with more on Tell Me More Stories Told as podcast.
Looking forward to it.
Just hours after the photos were released,
Right.
the brothers, now aware
Uh-huh.
that they were being hunted,
Right?
they killed an MIT police officer,
Oh, no.
Sean Collier,
Gosh.
in a cold-blooded attempt to steal his gun.
Goodness.
It's like the story took a sudden dark turn.
Yeah.
The stakes were raised.
Uh-huh.
The danger became even more real.
Right.
And the pressure on law enforcement intensified.
I can imagine.
Then came the carjacking.
Oh, wow.
The brothers forced a young Chinese entrepreneur
Uh-huh.
named Dun Meng
Then Meg.
to drive them around,
Oh, gosh.
withdrawing money from ATMs,
Right.
basically holding him hostage.
What?
Can you imagine the terror he must have felt?
It must have been terrifying.
Being trapped with these two
Yeah.
desperate fugitives, not knowing what they would do or where they would go.
Goodness.
But Dun Meng was incredibly brave.
He was.
He saw an opportunity
Uh-huh.
when the brothers stopped at a gas station,
Yeah.
and he made a run for it,
Wow.
escaping into the night
Oh, my God.
and eluding the police.
That's incredible.
His actions,
Yes.
his courage,
Right.
played a pivotal role
Right.
in what happened next,
At a bet.
because that's what led the police to the Tsarnaevs.
Right.
It set off the chain of events
Uh-huh.
that culminated in that traumatic shootout in Watertown.
The shootout.
Okay, hold on, before you go any further.
Sure.
I need to hear all about that shootout.
Okay.
That's a story for part 2, right?
You got it.
We'll pick up the story right there.
Okay.
With the sound of gunfire
Uh-huh.
echoing through the streets of Watertown,
Yeah.
and the manhunt for the Tsarnaev brothers
Right.
reaching its climax.
I can't wait.
Okay, so we left off with the police closing in on the Tsarnaev brothers in Watertown. You mentioned a firefight. It sounds intense. Paint me a picture. What happened?
It was a war zone. Like, you're a resident in Watertown, it's the middle of the night, and suddenly your quiet street is transformed into this chaotic scene.
I can't even imagine.
The Tsarnaev brothers, armed with guns and explosives, they were holed up engaging in this fierce shootout with the police.
Wow.
Hundreds of rounds were exchanged, explosions rocked the neighborhood. It was just chaos.
It must have been terrifying for the people living there. Were any residents hurt?
It's actually amazing that no civilians were injured. The police did a great job evacuating people and containing the situation, but it was definitely a close call for many.
So what happened to the brothers during this chaos?
Well, as the shootout continued, Tamerlan, the older brother, was shot multiple times, and in a desperate attempt to escape Dzhokhar, the younger brother got behind the wheel of their stolen car. And this is where it gets really crazy. He actually ran over his own brother, dragged him for a short distance before speeding away.
He ran over his own brother. That's unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about a desperate act. So what happened to Tamerlan? Did he survive that?
He was severely injured and died shortly after at the hospital. But Dzhokhar managed to escape in the chaos, leading to this massive manhunt that basically shut down the entire city of Boston.
I remember hearing about that. It was all over the news. Boston was on lockdown, right?
Absolutely. Schools and businesses were closed. Public transportation was shut down. Residents were ordered to stay inside their homes. It was unprecedented. Thousands of law enforcement officers from all over swarmed the streets, going door to door searching for any sign of Dzhokhar.
So the whole city is on edge waiting for this fugitive to be caught. What a tense time. How did they finally find him?
The manhunt went on for almost 20 hours, and in the end it came down to pure luck. I guess you could call it fate. After hours of searching, the shelter-in-place order was finally lifted, and a resident of Watertown, a man named David Henneberry, he decided to check on his boat, which was parked in his backyard.
I'm guessing he found more than just boat supplies.
You got it. As he approached the boat, he noticed something off. The tarp covering it was kind of messed up. He lifted it up, and there, hiding underneath, was Dzhokhar Tsarnaev, bloodied and weak.
Wow, what a way to end the manhunt. It sounds like a movie scene. What happened next?
Henneberry called the police immediately, and within minutes the area was surrounded by SWAT teams and helicopters. After a tense standoff, Dzhokhar was captured, bringing an end to the terror that had gripped Boston for days.
It must have been such a relief for everyone. But of course, capturing him was just the beginning of another chapter in this story.
Absolutely. Now, the focus shifted to figuring out why the brothers did this, how they became radicalized, and what justice would look like for the victims and their families. It gets really complex.
So we go from a manhunt to a courtroom drama.
Exactly. We move from the streets of Boston to the halls of justice, where the whole nation grappled with the legal and moral complexities of this case.
I'm hooked. Don't leave me hanging. We need to talk about the trial and everything that happened after. But that's for part 3, right?
You got it. We'll pick up the story there, exploring the trial, the verdict, and the lasting impact this event has had on our world. Stay tuned.
So we're finally here. The courtroom. What was it like when the trial of Dzhokhar Tsarnaev began?
I can tell you there was just this sense of anticipation. You could feel the weight of the city, the nation on that courtroom.
Yeah.
For the victims and their families, it was a chance to finally face the person responsible. For the rest of us, it was a moment to try to understand, how could this happen?
Right. The prosecution had a lot of evidence to present, right? Yeah. And we saw the photos, heard about the carjacking, the shootout.
Oh, yeah. The prosecution built a very strong case. They had DNA evidence, eyewitness accounts, video footage, even that note Dzhokhar wrote inside the boat where he was found.
That's right.
Remember, he tried to justify the bombings, saying it was revenge for U.S. military actions in Muslim countries, calling the victims collateral damage.
It's hard to grasp that mindset, trying to justify such a horrific act.
Yeah.
What about the defense? What was their strategy?
It was a tough case for them. They couldn't deny Dzhokhar's involvement. So they focused on portraying him as this young man under the influence of his older brother, Tamerlan. They argue that he was a follower, not the mastermind, hoping to convince the jury to spare his life.
So they were basically admitting he was involved, but trying to minimize his role.
Exactly. They painted this picture of a lost and vulnerable young man, manipulated by his brother.
Did it work? Did the jury buy that argument?
In the end, no. The jury found Dzhokhar guilty on all 30 counts, and in June of 2015, he was sentenced to death.
I imagine that brought some sense of closure for some, but it also probably reignited the debate over the death penalty.
Absolutely. The sentencing brought mixed emotions. For many, especially the victims' families, it felt like justice. But for others, it raised questions about capital punishment, even for someone who committed such a terrible crime.
So case closed, right?
Well, not quite. There's another twist. Dzhokhar's death sentence was actually overturned by an appeals court. They ruled that the trial judge didn't properly screen jurors for potential bias.
So they overturned the sentence because of a technicality.
You could say that, but the court found that the jury selection process might have been flawed, which could have impacted Dzhokhar's right to a fair trial.
Okay, so what happened next?
The case went all the way to the Supreme Court, and in a pretty controversial decision, they reinstated the death sentence in 2022.
So where do things stand now?
As of today, Dzhokhar Tsarnaev remains on death row, and the legal battles continue.
It's a story with so many layers, so many lives impacted. What do you think is the biggest takeaway from all of this?
I think it shows us just how complex our world really is. The Boston Marathon bombing wasn't just about two brothers. It was about extremism, about failures in intelligence gathering, about a city's resilience, and about the constant struggle to balance security and freedom in a world where these kinds of threats exist.
It's a lot to take in. Thanks for taking us on this journey. It's been heartbreaking, eye-opening, and really thought-provoking.
It was my pleasure. These stories, even the tough ones, are important to tell and to remember.
And to everyone listening, thank you for joining us on Tell Me More Stories Told as podcast. If you found this deep dive insightful, hit that subscribe button and leave us a review. We'll see you next time for another story.